Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Lynn Oliver, and I am the co-founder of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And I want to welcome you to today's program, which is called, Are You Free to Read What You Want? And it's a conversation between high school students and 3 banned book authors. So let me just say that in the beginning of this last year, the SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, founded the Impact and Legacy Fund, and that's to do charitable and community service work. And one of the things that we wanted to take action on right away is the issue of banned book and censorship, because as I'm sure you're all aware, this has become a very timely and controversial subject in our society. And so, first of all, I'd like to thank Sarah Baker, who is Executive Director of SCBWI, for her leadership in this area. And so the first thing we did was get in touch with the National Coalition Against Censorship, a group that we have belonged to for a very long time, which is a coalition of nonprofits like the SCBWI and many, many others, I think 58 other organizations. And the National Coalition Against Censorship has been very active in discussing and defining and defending our freedom to read and our freedom of expression. It's an amazing group, and we're very happy to be co-sponsoring this program with them today, and we hope to do many more in the future. So, as I'm sure all of you who are watching are aware, this has been a time in our culture of very many book challenges. Book challenges are moments when particular books and authors are banned or challenged, and especially in schools, public schools, private schools, and libraries. And so this is a very timely conversation to have in terms of us defining what we are free to read, what ideas we're free to be exposed to, and what our rights are. And first of all, I would like to say, so this will be a conversation between 4 high school students and with 3 banned authors, 3 of the most banned and notable authors in children's books working today. So the first thing I'd like to do is say bravo to our students and to our authors for having the courage to speak their truth, for having the courage to question standards, and to appear on this program and lead us in this very thoughtful conversation and shine a light on what the issues are. The format of this evening is, first, I'm going to introduce you to some people from the National Coalition Against Censorship who will give you a little background and define the mission and define what the issues are. Then we'll introduce you to 4 high school students who are members of the Student Advocates for Speech organization that has been formed by the National Coalition Against Censorship. And they'll tell you somewhat about their activities at their school and what they stand for and what their community and what they're struggling with in their community. And then we'll bring on our 3 authors, who are Ellen Hopkins, Lesléa Newman, and Mike Curato. 3 extremely well-known, well-reviewed, highly praised, very successful children's book authors or author illustrators, all of whom have had very serious challenges to some of their work. And then we will encourage all of you who are watching to ask questions. So we do have a Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom. So if you have questions that come up as you're listening to the conversation, be sure and post them in the Q&A. And when we get to our question and answer part, we'll try our very best to make sure that all of your questions are included. If you see a question that you have that's been already asked, you can upvote it so that you don't have to ask the same question over and over. And we encourage you to participate in this conversation. So without further ado, you've heard enough from me. We have incredible guests and much to discuss. And I'm sure it will be a lively and timely conversation. So the first thing I would like to do is to introduce you to the Executive Director of the National Coalition Against Censorship, Chris Finan. Chris, are you there with us? There he is.
Indeed.
So thank you so much for sponsoring this amazing program where you're encouraging high school students to become leaders in the movement for freedom of expression and freedom to read. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, who will be extremely articulate on this subject. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Lynn. And it's time for me to thank you, for SCBWI BWI's long support, as you pointed out, of National Coalition Against Censorship, and for partnering with us tonight.
You do great work, and this is our privilege and our honor. So over to you, Chris.
So for those of you who don't know much more than this about National Coalition Against Censorship, we were organized in the 1970s, the mid-1970s, at a time when there was major pushback against the free speech victories of the 50s and the 60s. And our coalition is made up of national nonprofits, a wide variety of nonprofits that care deeply about this issue, and we have been fighting ever since. The National Coalition Against Censorship defends freedom of thought and free expression, and we do so through two major programs: our Youth Free Expression Program, which includes our Kids Right to Read project, which, as Lynn has suggested or mentioned, is very active right now in the current fight against censorship. We also have an arts advocacy project that fights for the rights of artists, curators, and others caught in censorship battles. Our newest project is Student Advocates for Speech, which is an effort to work with high school students to create clubs in their schools where kids can learn about and advocate for their rights and for the rights of others, including the rights of people who they may not agree with. The lesson that we hope all Americans are learning is the importance of being open to discussing ideas with those they disagree with. So we have, the idea of getting kids involved in this is not that kids weren't involved before. I mean, kids have always been involved in struggles for social justice. During the civil rights movements, Black kids came out of their schools in the South to join voter demonstrations in support of voter registration. And they were often punished along with adults for those demonstrations. During the Vietnam War, students were obviously very involved, and one student in particular stands out, Mary Beth Tinker and her brother, who put on armbands to protest the war and were suspended from school as a result. Their fight against that suspension led to one of the most important precedents we have today for protecting free speech in schools. And that was, Mary Beth Tinker was 13 years old when she engaged in that advocacy. Yeah, more recently, the students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, the victims of a terrible mass shooting, organized a national protest, which again brought high school students out of the classroom and into the streets to advocate for more gun control. Many student athletes joined Colin Kaepernick's kneeling during athletic events to protest racial injustice. And today, in this fight against book banning, students are also very much involved. We recently honored at our benefit a student from Central York, Pennsylvania, who organized a group of students that was successful in rolling back the bans that their school board had imposed. And other kids are forming free clubs, book clubs, where they can read these banned books, and they very much recognize that their own rights are directly at stake in the book banning fight. So SAS, the Student Advocates for Speech, is off to a really exciting start. We're very encouraged by this initial year. This is our pilot project this year, and we have found 9 students, great students, as you'll see, in 9 school districts around the country who have organized or are organizing clubs. And it is my pleasure to introduce you now to 4 of them. Owen Baxter and Sylvia Cates are students at North Kansas City High School in Kansas City, Missouri. Datavian Daniel is a student at Harmony Science Academy in Euless, Texas. And Max Moore is at Voorhees High School in New Jersey. And I'll let them now tell you more about themselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Datavian Daniels. As Chris previously stated, I am a student here in the great state of Texas. I want to start by thanking you all for joining us today. But without further ado, I'm going to get into talking about why I chose to start an SAS, the Student Advocates for Speech Club at my school. So as you all know, I live in the state of Texas, and right now we're currently in one of the most political times of our generation. And students like myself are seeing the effects of such a political environment in our classrooms daily, with book bans and things of that sort, and censorship as a whole, which has taken a toll on our education and our learning environment. It's also taken a toll on our mental health. As we are students and we are humans, we want to learn and be welcomed into an environment where we feel safe to learn. But currently, with the current situation that's going on, we just don't feel that safety and security has been ensured by our district. And I just wanted to reach out and see what I could do personally and change the minds and hearts of those who are above us and manage these types of situations, to see if they could work with us together to build a better tomorrow, essentially. So recently at HSA Euless in Euless, Texas, we've been focusing on basically spreading the word about freedom of speech and censorship going on in America today. We recently did a We Stand with the Women of Iran protest throughout our school, where we went around the school taking photos with a board that we created together to spread awareness about the current situations going on with Masha Amani and others in the country of Iran. And previous to that, we also did a banned book campaign where we made bulletin boards around the school that showed our support for banned book authors, and showed that we do want change and we do want to read what we want to read in our schools, so long as it's a safe learning environment for everyone included. And finally, our impact so far has been that we're changing the minds of students and administrators and teachers around us to be more inclusive and go through more of a thinking process before they make such big decisions about what we can and cannot do as students in a school. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to another member of the SAS program. And again, my name is Datavian.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. I attend school in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am an advocate for free speech and free expression. I think that it's one of the most important things that you can have in life, because you can express yourself through a book, style, and sexuality, and you need free speech and expression for that. I think without it, we couldn't share our stories with other people who need to hear them and need to be challenged by them. And I think we should be able to show the world who we are with no consequence. Free expression has been challenged in my specific school, and there's one instance of a parent association trying to take books off of the shelves that were primarily written by people of color and LGBTQ people, and they successfully got them taken off the shelves, but a number of people from our school, including Owen, who will talk in a few minutes, got the books reinstated in our library. So that was really awesome. And a year later, we are still fighting the same issue, but it's not with the school board or the parent association, it's with our state. And our new club definitely helps with bringing people together and giving us a place to talk about issues like that in a safe way, and just like giving us a productive place to talk about that. Um, One of the activities we've done, we created zines, and I think it was a really empowering experience, especially creating art with people my age and just having like a little space to create art. And they were also about censorship. So I think that was a really empowering activity. And I hope to have more meetings with the coalition in the future years. But yeah, I'll pass it on to another student advocate for free speech. So bye.
Hi, my name is Max, and I'm from a small school in rural New Jersey. Last year, in September, from September to January, my school dealt with the threat of a few book bans. The 4 books in question were Genderqueer, Lawn Boy, All Boys Aren't Blue, and This Book is Gay, all slandered for supposedly having pornographic content. Students banded together to speak at Board of Education meetings and raise awareness. And when the books were voted on in January, every book was decided to be kept in the library. It was shortly after this decision that I found out about SAS and applied. Following the recent board elections, we have a new Board of Education member who has been about wanting to ban books. As a transgender student, I have seen and experienced firsthand how exposure to different perspectives and stories not only helps students grapple with questions of identity, but also allows other students to learn how those different from them may see the world. We recently got the club off the ground at our school, so we've only had 2 or 3 meetings. We had an information meeting and a meeting where we debated a recent free speech case. I'm planning to have a meeting where we make zines. So yeah, that's where we are right now at our school.
All right. Hi, my name is Owen. I go to school Sylvia in Missouri at North Kansas City High School. Around middle school, I started engaging more in political discourse, and I think that was the biggest reason for me getting into free expression. I also myself am a part of the queer community, and in light of states and cities and schools, specifically mine as well, banning books that targeted marginalized communities, including the queer community. I felt really personally affected by it. Myself and other students combated our district band, and a small group of us were actually able to hold a virtual seminar with George and Johnson, the author of All Boys Aren't Blue, and we were able to get those books back on the shelf, which was super exciting. Additionally, the administration at my school is not the most friendly. We've faced a lot of backlash for critiquing them or combating the censorship that they give us, which is actually how I discovered Student Advocates for Speech with Sylvia as we combated that administration. My journalism teacher recommended it to me, and we both read about it, and it was super interesting. And so we both signed up, and that's how we started working with them. We've had really, really good conversations about what censorship means to us as individuals, because censorship is a very personal experience, especially for people that are personally affected by books being banned or gag orders. Especially in Missouri, because as Sylvia said, we're still fighting this issue, specifically with graphic novels. And we've garnered a really good amount of people coming to our meetings. And yeah, I mean, this year, I'm really excited for this year. I think it's going to go super well. Yeah. I will invite Lynn to come back on and introduce our authors.
Thank you, all 4 of you, Tavian and Max and Sylvia and Owen. You are shining lights of what young people are supposed to be these days. So we'll be back with you in a few minutes. I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce the authors that we've invited to engage with the student advocates for speech. So authors, if you will come on, I'm going to introduce each of you. These are some of my favorite people on the entire planet. And I will introduce them just very briefly and let them speak for themselves. First, we have Ellen Hopkins, and Ellen is an author of novels for adults, for young adults, and now for middle grade students. She's most known to this group for her novels for teens and young adults, which are written in verse. She's written 14 novels. All of them have been banned. All of them have been on the New York Times bestseller lists. All of them have been highly praised and acclaimed. So one of the things we want to investigate is how this happens, that good books, books that sell well, books that are reviewed well, books that are acclaimed by authorities on child development, how they happen to come to be challenged. You'll probably know her first book was Crank, and other titles include Burned and Glass, and recently she's written a middle grade novel in verse, and which is called What About Will? And so that will be Ellen Hopkins. We're going to hear from her in a minute, the most banned author in America. High praise to you, Ellen, for that. And also a spokesperson for book challenges. The next person I'd like you to meet is Lesléa Newman. Lesléa, there she is. So Lesléa is a novelist, a poet, and a picture book writer. And she's written countless books, but some of her most important titles that you would probably know are October Morning, a song for Matthew Shepard, Sparkle Boy, and of course the classic Heather Has Two Mommies, which was originally published. I think it was originally self-published, and then it found a publisher in 1990, and it's the story of a girl who is part of a non-traditional family who has two lesbian mothers. This book has become a classic and a standard, and set a bar for the portrayal, for the emotional portrayal, resonant portrayal of a non-traditional family. And it has been resoundingly banned over a number of years. And the third person I'd like you to meet is Mike Curato. Mike is coming to you now all the way from Thailand, where he's doing a month-long residency. So Mike burst onto the scene in 2014 as an author and illustrator with his first book, Little Elliot, who's everybody's favorite polka dot elephant. And there are now 5 Little Elliot books, picture books, and they're beloved. He's also been the illustrator of Worm Loves Worm and What If, other picture books. And then he did an exceedingly bold thing. He wrote and illustrated and published his debut YA graphic novel called Flamer, which is the story of a teen's struggle to realize and accept that he is gay. Acclaimed all over the country. It won the Lambda Literary Award. It won the Golden Kite Honor Award, and yet Flamer is banned in so many places across this country. So these are our 3 authors. They're going to speak to you a little bit about their experience of having a book challenged. And then we're going to bring the students back so they can have a conversation about this. So we had decided earlier that we were going to go in alphabetical order according to first name. So if my alphabetizing memory serves me correctly, I think Ellen, that's you first. Leslie and Mike, you can stay on and so that you can all participate in the conversation, but each one of you will go first. So Ellen, over to you.
I don't have a screen sharing, but I can show you that stack of books right there. That's my YA collection, and all of them, well, 14 of them are currently banned from school districts somewhere in this country. What I can say is, so Crank was my first novel. It published in 2004. It's inspired by my daughter's story of meth addiction. And I wanted to write that book for teens, specifically to try to keep teens from going in the same direction that she did. The choice she made at 17 years old affected her life, not only her life, but the lives of her family, her children, all our family. And that choice now has been taken us away for like 26, 27 years, a long, long time. So I really wanted to portray the reality of addiction and how quickly it can happen, and how, which is just a silly choice to go out and have a party, go out and party with your friends, can change your life negatively forever. The book, there are 2 million plus copies of it in print around the world now. It has changed for the positively impacted, positively changed many, 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 many lives. And yet it's probably one of the most banned books in this country right now. Because it speaks the truth, because there's no sugarcoating, because I show you through the characters how far you can tumble from being a straight A+ kid to all the way down. The book is banned. That book is banned specifically because it's got drugs in it, which you can't write about drugs without writing about drugs. So I don't know how I could have changed that part of it. The F word is in it twice, and very specifically in it twice. The first time I use it is when the daughter, and this happened to me when my daughter, who we were like this, looked at me one day and she said, "You." And that break was so substantial that I needed to put it in the book because it's there purposely. You know, there's sexual content in these books, and some of them more so than in others, because teens are either having sex or they're thinking about having sex or they're wondering if they should have sex. And so again, by showing you possible outcomes to these choices, the choice to or not to have sex in that situation, hopefully I can give insight and understanding to young people that don't have the perspective that I have. You know, people ask me a lot of times, how come you're an old woman? How can you write YA? And it's like, because I can bring this much perspective to this a stage. You know, these young people, that these wonderful young people here have 15, 16, 17 years worth of experience, and I've got a lot more than that. And I can bring that experience into a book and show them the outcomes. And I think it's hugely important that we allow them to understand the questions, have answers to the questions that they're asking themselves. And books are the safest place that I can think of for them to explore those things. Book challenges, my books have been challenged over the years. So 2004 until now, that's a long time. Over the years, each book has been individually challenged. You know, a parent would find their child reading this book and want to know what was in the book, and then they might get angry at their child for reading the book. But when it's one parent, we can have a conversation or a dialogue, or the child can have a conversation with their parent, or a teacher or a librarian can have a conversation. That's not what's happening in this country now. What's happening in this country now is, for me, if my name is on one of these book covers, in some school districts, just having my name on the book cover is enough to have the books removed, without reading the books, without knowing why someone's upset with them, other than the pull quotes that take everything out of context. And just like, it's easy enough to do that with anything, right? And so now it's different. This is a political movement. It's not individual parents. A lot of these parents that are going to school district meetings aren't actually even parents. They don't have kids in the school districts where they're challenging these books. There's money backing it. It's a political drive to really weaken public school education. And for me, that's, you know, I've had many kids through the public school system, and I believe in teachers, and I believe in librarians, and I believe that kids should have the right to read books, that librarians should have the right to have these books in their libraries, that teachers should have them on their bookshelves. Not every kid's going to want to read them. That's fine. But one parent, one group of parents cannot be allowed to speak for every kid in this country. It's just unfair. So as far as strategies, right now, I've kind of teamed up to do a lot of stuff with these kind of movements that are anti-Moms for Liberty, Defense of Democracy, Freedom with READ, Fighters, Freedom to Read, those kind of organizations that are kind of more grassroots. And I'm trying to team up with them to give them a little bit more power to their voice. And I just, in closing, I just would like to read you guys one thing. This came to me at a book signing, and the young man just dropped it off in front of me, and he kind of left. And it says, "Dear Ellen, I don't have a book for you to sign, but your words are worth more than any signature. When I was in a dark place, you didn't know my name, yet you saved my life. Impulse was saving grace. Without it years ago, I'd have been in my grave. It now sits on my nightstand, closer than my Bible. You're dumb, you're gay, you're nobody. Who loves you? You're dyslexic, they say. I'm smart. I'm an artist and a brother. My dragonfly loves me, and Ms. Ellen, because of you, I'll be an author one day. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Ellen. That was so moving. That letter is amazing. And I'm so impressed by the high school students. You're so well spoken, which I certainly was not at your age. So thank you for inviting me to participate. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. So bear with me for a minute. So these are some of my books that have been challenged. Heather Has Two Mommies, which, by the way, I need to correct, Lynn, was not self-published originally. It was co-published with a friend of mine, but that's a whole other story. Donovan's Big Day is about a little boy whose two moms get married. Sparkle Boy is a book about a little boy who likes to wear sparkly things like skirts and nail polish and bracelets. October Morning is a poetic exploration of the impact of Matthew Shepard's murder upon the world. And I just want to take a moment to let you know that tomorrow, December 1st, is Matt's birthday, and he would have been 46, which is very sobering. Mommy, Mama, and Me and Daddy, Papa, and Me are two board books. So all of these books currently are on lists of books that are being challenged. So I'm going to talk about Heather Has Two Mommies and just kind of highlight one or two challenges that it faced. This is the original book jacket. It was first co-published. My friend and I raised a lot of money, writing letters, licking envelopes, and the book came out in December of 1989. So that is 33 years ago. And so I've been talking about book banning for 33 years. I'm a little tired, but very important, and the fight goes on for freedom of speech. So this happened in Texas in the late 1990s. So it says minister protests contents. So a pastor named, his last name was Jeffress, Robert Jeffress, one of his congregant members brought him Heather Has Two Mommies and Daddy's Roommate, which he had checked out of the public library, and he was outraged and refused to return them. He, by the way, was running for political office at the time, so this became his platform. Anyway, when he was pressured to return the books, he said that he would instead give the library the monetary value of the books, which of course the librarian said this is not the way things work. And so there were community meetings, there were letters to the editor, there were all kinds of protests. And at first it says 2 books will stay on the shelf. So in July of 1998, Linda Hughes, who actually won a nice award for her work at freedom of expression, she decided to keep the 2 books on the shelf, despite the minister's attempt to move them to the adult section of the library, which is very clear if you look at these books, they are children's books. So when Pastor Jeffries did not succeed at first, what he decided to do was go to the city council, and he proposed an ordinance that would create an adult-only checkout section in the library. And the only 2 books in this adult-only checkout section would be Heather Has Two Mommies and Daddy's Roommate. So again, there were meetings, there were letters to the editor. So here is something from the local newspaper that says, no special areas, don't start banishing books at the library. And so this is under our opinion. So this was the official stance of the local newspaper. And then the opposing viewpoints is an editorial by Janie Hill that says it's sinful, remove those books that teach against God's will. And Janie Hill, as you can see, is from a ministry called God is Love. Obviously, her ministry believes God only loves some people. So then the book plan was defeated, which was great. So it was by a 4-3 vote saying that the library was not going to create an adult-only checkout section and the books would stay in the children's book section. However, another ordinance was proposed which said that any book that had a petition against it signed by 300 library card owners had to be removed from the children's section and moved to the adult section of the library. And there was no recourse if that happened. So very quickly, again, more letters, a tyranny of 300. The library proposal endangers the very freedom that allows religions to thrive in this country. And this was signed by 25 members of the local clergy. And I found that very moving. And here you have a scrutiny of a plan. You have people from Janie Hill's God is Love ministry holding prayer vigils both inside and outside of the library until they were told they had to leave the library because of separation of church and state. So the city council voted, and this time they voted for change. So they said that, yes, if a petition was presented to the library with 300 or more signatures, the books would have to be moved from the children's section to the adult section. And of course, it didn't take long for the books to be moved. Heather Has Two Mommies petition had 570 signatures on it. Daddy's Roommate had 567 signatures on it. So very quickly after that, the book decision was going to court, and our friends, the very important ACLU, started a lawsuit against this to get the books back where they belong, which is in the children's section. And so the lawsuit took a year. And then here we have unconstitutional. This was the very dramatic front page of the newspaper in Wichita Falls, Texas. Did I say where this was happening? Wichita Falls, Texas. And the judge quoted from a previous First Amendment case, which read in part, quote, "Speech cannot be burdened or banned simply because it might offend a hostile mob." And some people, this cost the good citizens of Wichita Falls about $30,000. And some people thought that the minister should foot the bill, but of course he did not agree. So I imagine that that was my 5 minutes, so I'll stop sharing, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Lesléa. You've always been an inspiration, pioneering the way for queer young folks literature. So thank you for everything that you've done in paving the way for people like me. I am also going to share my screen, so bear with me for a moment. Okay, here I am. I'm Mike Curato. I am a author and illustrator of books for children and young adults. And quick content warning, I do discuss self-harm and suicidal ideation. Here I am as a young reader. I've always loved books. I've always loved to make art. Here's some of my early work. Dog flanked by flowers. This was when I was really young, maybe like preschool, and then I just always continued to make art. This is stuff from like elementary and middle school. I also loved writing, poetry, short stories. I loved comic books so much. I learned a lot to draw by copying things like Disney in the last slide and comic books, big X-Men fan. And I also liked to do a lot of artwork about identities. This is a photo of me in high school and some of my work back then. And here are some of my picture books. The Little Elliot series is where I started. And there's my latest picture book that I wrote and illustrated, Where's Peanut Bear? So these have all been celebrated for their themes of friendship and inclusivity. Meanwhile, I have some other books that have been banned and challenged also for their themes of inclusivity, including Worm Loves Worm, written by J.J. Austrian, which is a book about changing how it's always been done to make room for everyone to be able to love who they want to love. And The Power of One by Trudy Ludwig, a book about kindness, community, and the power of the apology and forgiveness, which I fail to see why that needs to be banned, but everything is sort of a mystery, huh? And I am the author and illustrator of Flamer, my most banned book. And Flamer is the story of Aiden Navarro, who is a 14-year-old Filipino white mixed kid who's away at scout camp in 1995, the summer before his freshman year of high school. And he is navigating friendships and bullying and how those things can intersect. He's dealing with racism, struggling with his religion and body dysmorphia. And all of that is the backdrop to Aiden accepting his sexual identity. This is teenage me. I had a lot in common with Aiden, and the inspiration for Flamer is very much rooted in my personal experience. I was not a popular kid growing up. It was hard for me to make friends. But I liked scouting. It was a way for me to make friends outside of my school, get outdoors, and especially summer camp. I really looked forward to camp because it was the only time during the year that I felt really free. But there were still some things that I couldn't get away from. I did not feel good about my body. And I always felt different in a million ways, some more obvious than others, but I did not fit in. And I had a lot of questions, and there was so much I didn't understand, especially about myself. And I struggled to find a place I felt safe. I didn't feel safe in the world. I didn't feel safe at home. And even my mind wasn't a safe place. And it felt like that was never going to end. I was so afraid, and sometimes there are fears that we can't hide from. And eventually we have to face them. I felt lost. I felt like there was nowhere to run. And I thought, maybe I shouldn't be here. Sometimes life feels like hell. And sometimes you have no choice but to face your worst fears. But the hardest thing that I have found is facing yourself. Because nothing is scarier than living your truth, being your authentic self, no matter what. But when we embrace that truth, when we lean into the fear, when we inhabit the truest form of ourselves, that is what sets us free. I wrote Flamer for me, and I wrote Flamer for people like me. I wanted there to be a book in the world that could show how I feel. When I was young, I didn't think there was anyone in the world like me. I thought I was alone. I thought there was something wrong with me. But the more people I've met over the years, the more I know now that I was not alone. I had real friends out there that were going through the same thing I was. We just hadn't met yet. And I made Flamer because I wanted young folks out there who haven't met their community yet to have some hope to hold on to know that someone went through what they are going through, and that I made it to the other side. That what seems impossible is possible, that you can be happy and accepted for who you are. And I think it's important for people who are not like us to be able to see us, not just as people, but people who can be their friends. And I want to give a quick shout out to Trevor Project. If you're ever feeling like you're in any kind of danger to yourself, they're 24 hours a day. You can contact them through their website, thetrevorproject.org, and they have a hotline so you can call or DM them anytime. And also, if you just need some support, community support resources, Glisten is a great resource. So check them out. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Here I am. So very quickly, I just want to say, I mean, I'm not going to repeat everything that Ellen and Lesléa have already talked about, but I will say, you know, graphic novels are kind of low-hanging fruit for this political book banning because it's so visual, right? So Flamer especially has been called pornography. I'm really tired of waking up every day and seeing my work slandered as pornography. Anything with a queer story, any kind of queer story is going to be labeled as pornography, and it's lazy. There's a sort of stigma around queer people that it's like we're sex crazed monsters and pedophiles and groomers, which I have been called numerous times, which gets old, frankly. But you know, graphic novels are so easy to prey upon because it's so visual. Someone can easily take a screenshot and throw it up online without any context. I have seen lots of videos of angry moms reading a passage from Flamer. And, you know, I'll be completely honest, there are sexual situations. No one in Flamer ever has sex. There are sexual situations. There's talk about masturbation. You know, like Ellen said, I need to show my readers that I know what they're going through. These are real issues that young adults, I'll repeat the phrase, young adults, you know, not kindergartners. These are people who are experiencing feelings and situations for the first time. And I want my book to prepare people for the real world. If I'm trying to connect with someone who's thinking of killing themselves, I need them to know, like, I was there. I understand how terrifying these feelings are for you. And I'm here to say, like, these are actually really normal situations that you're encountering, and that it doesn't mean that you're unloved or unlovable, and that you're not worthy of taking up space and having a life full of happiness. And yeah, so I can go on and on and on. And I will just say, you know, my advice to our young viewers is being there for each other, finding your communities. I know that there are a lot of people who are scared right now, feeling very alone. Maybe you don't have a GSA at your high school. Maybe you don't have any adults in your life that you can come out to or confide in. Obviously, there are ways of connecting with people on the internet, but it makes a difference, right? Having someone in person that you can talk to and confide in. So if that describes where you're at, I think getting involved with organizations like SAS could really, you know, help you connect with people that care about you. And I also want to give an example of some great student-led organization in Katy, Texas, Katy ISD. There was a group of students who got together and they worked through the Freedom Campaign, FREADOM, to solicit publishers for copies of banned books that they themselves distributed to their community members, people who were being denied books and who needed them. So, you know, you as students are not helpless. I know it's harder when you're a minor, but you do have some forms of agency. So I just want to just impress upon you that just supporting each other, having community is the most important thing, I think. Anyway, so hopefully I didn't run over my time. And Lynn's going to come back on and we're going to answer some questions.
So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Lesléa. Thank you, Ellen. I think everyone watching can see why these are three of my favorite people on the planet. They're honest and poetic and they have emotional depth and empathetic and compassionate. And I thank all of you for sharing these stories, which are full of both joy and frustration and pain. So now I'd like to invite the students back on. So Tavian and Max and Owen and Sylvia, come on in. We're in this next section, we're going to have you guys ask some questions of the authors, and then we also have some questions from the audience. So from the viewing audience. So if you're in the viewing audience and you have a question you'd like to pose, please do it now. But for the moment, we're going to start with Sylvia. Would you like to ask the first question? Make sure you're unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
So a question for the authors: what has inspired you to continue to write and publish after having your books be banned?
And I'll point up that the letter that I wrote, that is one of probably of literally tens of thousands of messages I've gotten over the year. I know that sounds like a lot, but it truly is emails and messages from young people who tell me how much they needed my books, and it doesn't matter. So to me, you know, I'm willing to fight to keep them on the bookshelves because I know somebody out there needs them. And those messages sometimes are very difficult. The really hard ones come like late at night when you're ready to go to bed, you know, and you're just like, oh no, not now. But those are the ones that are often the most important. And so to know how much the books are necessary, that somebody out there needs them, that keeps me going regardless.
Lesléa, what about you?
Yeah, so I wrote Heather Has Two Mommies at the request actually of a lesbian mom who stopped me on the street and said, I don't have a book I could read to my daughter that chose a family like ours. And that really resonated with me because I grew up in a Jewish family in the 1950s and there were no books where I could see myself. So I know firsthand what it's like not to see yourself in a book or on a movie screen or on a television screen, and how you begin to, or how I began to feel like I'm different, I'm inferior, there's something wrong with my family. So I wrote Heather Has Two Mommies for that little girl and other girls like her and for her friends so that she could see a wide variety of family constellations. And so when the book started being banned and when other books of mine have been banned, it just makes me mad. And when I get mad, I don't shut up, I get louder. So I just have continued writing more and more books that show the beautiful diversity of the human experience. And you know, I'm just not going to stop because that is what we need to hopefully make the world a better place.
Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, just to echo all of that, I mean, you all are the reason why I keep writing. I mean, I know that there are people like me out there that are still struggling, and all of this book banning nonsense has just reinforced the reason why I need to make more books like Flamer. So yeah, so I mean, part of my activism is continuing to do what I do. Yeah.
Does anyone have a follow-up question to that, or Max?
Hi, I have a couple questions, but they're kind of all related. So while you were writing your banned books, did you consider the possibility or know that they were going to be banned? And then after they were banned, how has that changed your perception of what you wrote, and how has it changed what you write moving forward?
All great questions. How about we start with Mike and go in the reverse order?
Yes. I mean, when I was working on Flamer, I was like, oh God, because people are used to reading about my cute elephant and cupcakes, and I'm not trying to diminish the value of the other work I've done, but this is like my first really raw book, and it came from a really personal place, and I wasn't holding back. And I was honestly surprised that there wasn't some kind of icky comments when it first came out. And honestly, the first year it came out, it was like all love. It was like Love Fest, and people were just so supportive. And I was like, wow, this is great. You know, maybe we are really, maybe we have come a long way. But then, you know, unfortunately, once the politicians started, you know, publishing their lists of censored books that they think should be censored, I was like, yeah, of course, here it is. And because I think that a lot of the people who are trying to ban these books haven't even read them, right? So of course I'm not gonna get any flack from someone who hasn't read my book and doesn't have someone telling them like, this book is bad. Don't read it, just trust me. So yeah, I wasn't surprised. And to answer your question, it hasn't really changed my perception of my own book. And it just, I mean, I was just saying this experience has just reinforced that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Lesléa?
Thanks, Max.
So I wrote Heather Has Two Mommies in 1988. Okay, so there were no picture books about kids in gay families because there were no books. So there were no books that were banned in that subject because they didn't exist. And so I was very naive. And also, I like to point out, I didn't write a controversial book. I wrote a book that some people consider controversial. I didn't write a banned book. I wrote a book that some people are trying to ban. What I did was write a book that has a simple message, which is a direct quote from the book. The most important thing about a family is that all the people in it love each other. And so I am still to this day puzzled as to how anyone can find that a controversial message, but clearly people do. So, you know, a lot of when I couldn't get the book published by traditional means. So my friend and I, my friend Sylvia Gober and I put it out ourselves. And some people did say to me, you know, are you going to publish it under your real name? And I was like, well, yeah, I don't want somebody else getting all the credit, you know. And people said, you'll never publish another children's, you'll never eat lunch in this town again, you'll never publish a children's book again. And, you know, it's quite the opposite. It was my ticket in. And so, you know, like I said before, it hasn't changed the way I write, except that it's made me even feel more strongly and passionately. And just like Ellen was talking about, the letters I've gotten from kids, you know, are so important. You know, mostly, you know, little kids, you know, their parents write to me and say things like, you know, my kid sleeps with Heather Has Two Mommies under her pillow. You know, my kid hugs it to her chest and takes it to school. One kid crossed out the word Heather and wrote Nick instead everywhere where Heather's name appears, and his mother didn't have the heart to say, we don't write in books, you know, because she just saw how important it was for him to literally insert himself into that text. So, you know, as long as there is a need for these books, which will be, I think, forever, I will continue to write them.
Honestly, when Crank was first challenged, I was like, what? Why wouldn't you want my first thing really was, why wouldn't you want your young people to read this book and to see, to understand? I was surprised. I guess I didn't really, I don't know, you know, I kind of passionately use the F word at home. So I guess, you know, putting it in a book didn't seem like it was, you know, that big a deal to me. And by the way, you know, I don't know if all these people that go to the school board meetings have ever been in like classrooms or on school buses or like in the hallways of a high school or junior high or even in elementary school. I mean, kids are aware, kids are sophisticated. You know, I keep going back to how really sophisticated young people are today. And I think that's what really frightens some adults is like that kids are smart, that they're willing to go places that their parents don't want them to go. You know, and it's kind of scary as a parent to let go of your kid, but at some point you have to. And if you give them the information they need, that gives them the power to take control of their own lives instead of being out of control. So Yeah, I was surprised. And then, I've gotten used to it over the years. What I would say is I just turned in, I have a YA coming out next year. And I will tell you that with this big giant wave of book banning, as I kind of wrote the book, I had to remind myself not to self-censor. It's easy to do, to step back and go, well, maybe more people, maybe it would be in more schools, maybe it would be on more shelves if I don't do that. But then I'm not being honest in my storytelling. And that's one thing I will say about all the authors on those lists, all those books on this list. What people are afraid of is the truth that's inside them. And we can't back away from the truth. There's nothing more important than being honest with our readers and with each other.
Wonderful. Datavian, do you have a question?
Okay, so my question for our beautiful authors is, what do you believe is fair or unfair when it comes to censorship? And what is that line that has to be set in order to keep not only our kids safe in schools, but also like to keep you all safe as well? Because authors have also been targeted around the country time and time again because of the things that they've written. So what's your take on that?
Lesléa, you start.
Well, that is a great question. Thank you for asking it. It definitely gives me pause because, I'm such a firm believer in freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And at the same time, I really have a very hard time protecting hate speech, speech that endangers people's lives. I mean, you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater if there's no fire. That is, you just can't do that. You're endangering people's lives. And so there are certain words that also endanger our lives, which I will not say here, but I've certainly had them directed at me. And so, where does one draw the line? I think that it's really important to think about intent. I mean, certain communities have taken back certain words and use them, among themselves in a different way, that the intent is not hate. So that is also something to consider. But can a horrible book, in my opinion, like Mein Kampf, be in the public library? Well, I actually think it should be in the public library, and I think people who choose to read it should have that opportunity to educate themselves and see where all that hatred came from. I hate to think that I would be defending such a book, but there you have it, because as soon as somebody starts censoring and banning a book, my book's going to be next. So I really do have to stand up for freedom of expression, even supporting books that I really wish did not exist.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I mean, we're heading in a direction in this country where, there's a faction of people who are increasingly totalitarian, and the more we bring our own religious ideologies to a public school setting, the more single narratives that we perpetuate about people, the more dangerous it becomes for everyone, right? And students are entitled to four basic rights: good nutrition, a safe environment, which this is creating a hostile environment, this book banning, right? Healthcare, and I believe healthcare includes mental health. I don't need to convince anyone that this is creating a really sickening mental health environment for everyone involved, and education. And the less books we have to read, the more access to knowledge is being denied, and we need to hear different perspectives. We need to know that different types of people are still people, and that we all deserve basic rights and respect. And I think students should be trusted to self-censor. If you're reading a book and you're feeling comfortable, you close the book and you say, I don't want to read the book. And a parent, even I also struggle with, like this idea of the parents' rights. We've been hearing a lot about like, I have a right as a parent to deny my child a book to read. And it's like, okay, maybe it should be less about like, you're not allowed to read this book, and more about, let's have a conversation about why I feel uncomfortable about you reading this book. Because I'm assuming that, that parent is not going to have the hard conversation that lies within those pages. And it's like, that's why the book is there, so that someone can have some support around a difficult conversation that maybe a parent isn't willing to jump into. So,
Plus, also, for you, the student advocates, it's like you can help open the eyes of your peers, right? Because you have friends, you have classmates, whatever, that might not ever see somebody different. You know what I mean? And so that's why it's super important for you guys to use your voices as well. I mean, we can use ours all day long, and people can just turn off, dial us out of Twitter or whatever. You guys you're on the front, and so for you guys to advocate not only for the books, but for the people that are represented by these books is super, super important. And you guys are the ones changing the future. I mean, look at this last election, this midterm election. Oh, young people never vote in the midterms. Well, yeah, they did. They turned out because they know how important it is to keep free speech and to keep us, moving in the right direction, the forward movement, right? We can't keep moving. We've got to stop moving backward. And so it's old people that want to like stick us in the middle of 1950 or whatever, you know what I mean? Not me, I'm old too, but you guys are the ones that are going to change the future. And so that's why we're writing these books, to empower you, to give you, to open your minds, to open your eyes, to give you the words you need to move this country forward.
Fantastic. What a message. Owen, let's have a question from you.
Okay, so for all the authors, obviously, in your experience with being censored and censorship in general, what advice would you give younger audiences or people in my generation or even younger, really, about responding to that censored work, whether it be yours or their own?
I just sort of answered that, so I'm going to let you guys chime in.
I think it's important to ask of the banners, why? Explain to me exactly why, because I know that there are places where my book has been banned, and on the forum where there's a little spot to be like, reason, like there's nothing, or like, or that's where the real truth comes out, where I've seen these like challenge forms from libraries, and under the reason why, it'll just say homosexual, and it's just like, that's the reason. Like, yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about like your homophobia, and why is that a reason to deny people's existence. So I think it's partly about reframing the conversation. There's a lot of like finger pointing and shaming, and it's like, why? Like, explain to me why. And then we get in, the layers peel back, and we get to these bigger issues of like church, separation of church and state, and it's like, that's not how this country is supposed to work. And in making everything about your own personal religion, you're undermining like the fabric of what this supposed democracy is built on, is that everyone is supposed to be equal. Lesléa, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So, I just had this thought, on this library forum where the problem is homosexual. Wouldn't it be great if it said instead, my homophobia? Because that's the problem,
yeah.
right? We are not the problem, right? The homophobia, racism, sexism, ableism, ageism, those are the problems. But nobody will own that. But what I'd like to say, I'm not big on giving advice, but what I would say is find your people. Don't go into this alone. Find a support system, your peers. There will definitely, well, I shouldn't say definitely, but my guess would be that there will be at least one teacher at your school who will back you up. I hope so. I hope there's more than one. But check out your home situation, but get yourself a support system. There's other places you could turn on the web, like the Trevor Project, like the Matthew Shepard Foundation. There are adults who will help you and who want to help you. And I think that that's really important. So so many of us as teens felt so alone, like Mike was talking about. I certainly did. But there's just so many more opportunities now to not only find your people that you can be with in person, but people on the internet, which we didn't have growing up. So get yourself some support so that you feel that you're not alone as a foot soldier in this fight.
So
Yeah, and I also, oh, sorry, Lynn, I just want to
No.
say, I think it's just really important to remember, we can't be censorship crusaders 24/7. Also, I certainly am not. It's really important to protect yourself, not so much in like, I'm going to hide myself away from the world, but just like take time for yourself. If you have access to, mental health care, please take advantage of it. Like I do, I need it. Take breaks, have fun, and take time to read whatever you want, watch whatever you want. But yeah, I just want young folks to know, like, we authors can't do it all the time either. So I think it's important to take breaks, recharge, and then get back into it.
Relevant to that, Mike, it's interesting that you brought that up, because one of our questions from the viewers is from Erin Entrada Kelly, herself a Newbery Award-winning author, who said, hi, Erin, who said, how do the authors practice self-care when dealing with these accusations? It must be infuriating for you. How do you work through that and protect your own mental and emotional well-being? So if you have anything to comment on that, Ellen and Lesléa, please do.
I've got dogs.
Dogs, okay.
Dogs. I take my dogs out, I go outside, I work in the garden, I step away from everything, turn off Twitter, because Twitter is the ugly space, but it's also an important space because it's a way you can get your voice, pretty widely out there. But yeah, you got to take the breaks and get a goofy dog if you can, because it's really helpful.
I happen to know those are fighting words because Lesléa is a cat person.
I was just going to say, so yes, I have a very bossy cat, and she is a great pal and great to hang out with. Chocolate always helps. Going outside and pulling weeds from the garden helps. But, talking to other writers who are going through this helps. Like I said before, you don't have to do this alone. Talking to other people who aren't writers. And then just taking a break, just go for a walk, or just, Mike, I think it's so important what you said, that, we need to also enjoy our lives. They're precious to us. So, I mean, I've used the word fight several times this evening. There are a lot of things for us to fight against, but we also need to embrace joy. We deserve that.
So for
Yeah, being happy is
be happy.
It's
the best revenge.
Being happy is not only revenge, but a way of activism. And but I also lean on my friends. If I'm feeling really down, like I will just call someone in the middle of the night and be like, I'm not having a good day. And yeah, like chocolate, ice cream, all my friends, those other friends, and my dog. And I work out. I think physical activity is good, whether it's just going for a walk, just something to like physically vent. I'm in Bangkok right now, and I took a Muay Thai class the other day, and I have rarely taken like a self-defense class, but I was like, oh my gosh, it feels really good to hit something. Not that I condone violence at all, but I was just like, okay, there's a man here holding a pad, and I'm like, and I'm gonna wail on this thing. So I just sweat it out.
Hit non-human objects. So
Non-human.
here's
Oh, non-living creatures.
non-living,
please.
that's right, actually, very good. This is a comment for the students from Daniel, who's one of our viewers, who said, Datavian, Max, Owen, and Sylvia, my sincere and warmest congratulations to you for your work, but especially for who you are and what you are already accomplishing in this world. And I think that we all feel that way. You have been so impressive. Well, there are a couple, we have a little lightning round of questions because we're going to have to end, but there are a few really key ones. Owen, someone wanted to ask you, this is Patricia, what you did to change the administration's mind. You had a very effective presentation, and how did you do that? What did you do? What was your strategy?
So the first time around when the books were banned, what we did was a bunch of us gathered together, and not just the students that spoke at the school board, a bunch of students really boosted this idea that this is wrong. I mean, these students want these books. This parent association that Sylvia mentioned, they don't speak for us. And so the biggest thing was, I think, strength in numbers and showing that these people don't represent who we are. But then the second time, with us combating some of the censorship that the administration was bringing upon us when we were expressing critique for the certain programs that they have in place, they attempted to intimidate us into not speaking out against them or censoring ourselves, essentially. And so I think it's important to remember that people like that kind of use their power dynamic over you are 9 times out of 10 all bark and no bite. They're usually not going to be able to really stop you from doing what you want to. And that was true. I mean, Sylvia and I still spoke at our school board against the policies and programs that they had in place, and their attempts, and included their attempts to censor us and intimidate us. And it worked pretty well. We're still kind of combating that because they're stubborn power dynamic people. But yeah, that's kind of where we went with that.
Well, listening to you talk, I certainly wouldn't want to go up against you. This is a question for all the students from Gina Maria. It's, what was your biggest obstacle for you in your SAS club? Did you encounter any resistance or any obstacles or any impediments that you either had to deal with or are still dealing with? Why don't we start with Max and then hear from Datavian and Sylvia?
Yeah, so our biggest obstacle was getting the club off the ground. There was a lot of stalling from the administration because we needed to have our club form approved so that it could be voted on by the Board of Education. So getting through that step of having the superintendent approve our form, it took at least a month to get that on the board agenda.
Do you think that was a political stall or just administrative bureaucracy?
I think it could have been political. There was a lot of questions about the name and not wanting to be divisive or cause issues. There was also, we had some issues in our school that caused the stall because everyone was really busy dealing with what happened. So I think it was a combination of a couple of different things.
Datavian, what about you? Was there an obstacle in forming your club or in proceeding with it?
Okay, so as they've recently said, administration is always a major problem when it comes to student organized clubs. But for SAS at my school personally, it was a combination of administration and engaging our students. So I started by gathering our students and spreading the word to them. And then once we had a couple of them, we went to our administration team. They denied. So then we kind of went back and devised a plan. So we started a petition. That petition got around 250 signatures from our students on our campus. We went back to administration. They denied again. So then I had a conversation with our superintendent, and he wasn't aware that anything was going on. It was basically the new administration team that kept denying our request. So then we didn't tell the administration team about that. We went back to them with our request again, and then we, bombed them with yeah, we spoke with the superintendent, it's going to get pushed through if you like it or not. So we kind of created that bad relationship with our administration team, but then we formed more relationships with our counselors and teachers, and now our advisor, and that is what solidified our ground in the school, and that's how we got to spread the word more to more students. And now we have about a 50 to 65 student average come out per meeting. And now we're planning our field trip that's going to be held in December to teach some of those students about oppression and all of that stuff that happened specifically during the Holocaust. So I think a major issue, again, would be administration overall.
Fantastic.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, you're full of fight. That's great. And Sylvia, you and Owen are at the same school, I know. So either of you can answer or chime in. Did you face any obstacles, or do you continue to face obstacles?
I honestly don't think that we faced many obstacles starting our club and continuing it, but I think one thing that we can work to improve is gaining just more people, getting more people to come to the meetings. And I think we have a lot of passionate people at our school, but they just don't necessarily know about the club, or they don't feel like coming. So I think we have to work on ways to try to get them to want to show up and do things. And I think that's been the hardest part so far, but I'm not sure if Owen wants to say anything else about that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. At the beginning, they kind of stalled us a little bit and were a little skeptical of us because they thought we were just gonna, hate on our administration the entire time or something ridiculous. So we had a bit of stalling at the beginning, but we kicked off pretty well. And I would agree. I think we definitely should. I mean, more outreach is always great. So yeah, I don't really have anything to add.
All right, so we have we're almost out of time. I would like to ask one last question, primarily the authors, but if students have something to chime in, that would be great. This has to be a short answer. And that is our last question. What do you think the future of censorship looks like? Either will look like or should look like. You have your choice of verbs. So Ellen, let's start with you.
I think it's going to take a while, but I think especially with student activists like these young people and others out there, I think we're going to go the other direction again. I don't think we're going to keep going in this direction. It's unsustainable. And again, young people, it's your future. You guys are gonna change that. I believe that with all my heart.
And Lesléa?
So it's two separate questions, what I think the future is going to be and what I think the future should be. I think we're in a dark time right now. And I think the worse things get, and I think they are going to get worse before they get better, the more inflamed people's emotions are going to be to try and really squelch this so that we do have the freedom to write what we want and read what we want. And as Ellen said, young people are our hope. And, it shouldn't be your burden, and we're with you every step of the way, but you are our hope because you are our future. And I just want to thank the young people here on the screen and on the call for everything you're doing. You are totally inspiring to me. I'm going to write more books for you.
And Mike, the future of censorship?
Complicated. Yeah, I think I agree with both Ellen and Lesléa. I think it is hopeful. You all, especially students with us today, are the people giving me that hope and preparing for the next pendulum swing. But yeah, we have to dig in the heels. We'll dig in the heels and keep sliding in this dark direction, but at a certain point, there's going to be traction and it'll start to move the needle again. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
And students, do you have one last comment to make, one last inspirational comment to other students or community members adults, parents, neighbors, friends, teachers, counselors. Do you have one last thing that you would like to say in terms of this issue of banned books and censorship and your commitment? Max, I'm going to start with you because you look promising.
Thank you. One of the big things, kind of going back to the question about self-care, especially being in high school and dealing with all of this stuff and being a trans kid, and all of this whole issue is kind of very personal to me. So self-care is the biggest thing that I can recommend to students who are looking to, fight censorship and get involved in advocacy.
Who else? Tavian, you have something to say?
The only thing that I personally have to add is that the people above us can stop one of us, but they can't stop the masses. When we come in mass numbers, they can't necessarily just not listen to us blatantly without reasoning. So spread the word and come in the masses, bring whoever you want, as long as they're there to fight with you, your voice will be heard. And just reach out to people. Everyone is there to help. Anyone is there to help. Just spread the word, that's all.
And maybe you could run for president as soon as you, I don't know what the minimum age is, but as soon as you hit it, please promise us you'll run. Owen and Sylvia?
I think the biggest thing, I said this already, but advocacy it's not an easy thing to do. And there's always going to be the adults or the people with more power or whatever it may be that are trying to bring you down or intimidate you into not fighting for it or fighting for it to a lesser degree. But the most important thing to remember is that, like, in the end, as a student, you have the right to do something like that in whatever scale that you would like, obviously not on a legal level, but so I think the biggest thing is just not allowing those people who think they have this power over you to actually have that power over you.
Sylvia, the last word.
I love everything that everyone just said, but I think what I'm going to say is that I think the main thing is that you need to just keep in touch with who you are and not let other people take any of it away from you, especially like family and administration and the people who are trying to do that, because if they do that, then like we lose and they win, and we don't need that. So just keep in touch with yourself and be who you want to be and who you are.
Listen, my heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you, to the 3 authors and to the 4 students. You have been such an inspiration this evening, and with such complicated and nuanced views. And we're so grateful for you for opening up this conversation and for shining a light on the issue of banned books. For those of you in the audience, this program will be available in its entirety for you to access at any time. It will be up the day after tomorrow on the SCBWI website. That's scbwi.org. And it's free to anyone in the community. So if you want to use it as a presentation or as a teaching tool or to present to students or classrooms, librarians, community groups, please do. And just one last word from me, and then we're going to turn it over to NCAC for the conclusion. Librarians are the frontline warriors in this fight, and often the librarians get the brunt of this as well. That they get criticized and receive all kinds of negative response for being the warrior to promote banned books or to put them on the shelves where they belong. And so just keep that in mind and be sensitive to librarians, to community librarians and school librarians, and know that they are by your side fighting this battle as well, and give them all your love. We, of course, at SCBWI always send all our love to librarians. So I thank all of you. You're fantastic. What I'm going to do now is turn the screen over to Christine Emerand, who is the Director of Youth Free Expression Program at the National Coalition Against Censorship. She has coordinated this whole thing in the most graceful and elegant way. and she will have the last word. So thank you all. And Christine, over to you.
Thanks so much, Lynn, and good evening, everyone. As Lynn has said, I'm Christine Emeren. I'm the director of NCAC's Youth Free Expression program, including the Kids Right to Read project. I founded and also lead the Student Advocates for Speech project that's focused on free speech advocacy and establishing high school clubs across the United States. I would like to warmly thank the featured students and authors for their thoughtful presentations. It was truly inspiring to hear stories about the effects of the book ban crisis on them, and also their suggested strategies on how to overcome such challenging situations. So as we get ready to close tonight's event, I would like to thank the audience for their engaging questions and encourage you to support SCBWI's Impact Fund, and also to donate to NCAC. Your contributions will allow us to expand student engagement projects. For students and others that may know a student who might be also interested, I would like to remind you that we will be accepting applications for the SAS project for a new round of cohorts beginning in mid to late February 2023. So please continue to monitor our SAS page and reach out via www.ncac.org if you have any questions. We also encourage you to sign up for ALA's Unite Against Book Ban campaign and to defend books in your communities. For your information, we'll also put relevant links to valuable resources in the chat and contact information for reaching out to us. And lastly, this event's recording will be available on our website shortly. So without further delay, I would like to wish everyone a good night and good evening and goodbye. Thank you again.